We're going to need a supporting edge loop going around the outside of both of these circles. To do that, the easiest way to do it is going to be to use an inset, or actually the outset, to create both of these outer rings. But to do that, first we need a face on both of these inner parts here. So we're going to Alt right click and press F to make a face, and then Alt right click and press F to make a face. Then we're going to switch to face select. This one's already selected. Hold shift right click to select this. Press I to inset, B for the border option, and then O to do an outset, and that will create these outer supporting edges on both of these circles. Just do a relatively small supporting edge loop. That's probably fine. Just left click when you're happy. And then we can delete both of these faces by pressing delete and choosing faces. We're going to switch back to vertex select. And I'm actually going to delete this outer edge loop. So we're going to hold Alt and right click, press delete and choose vertices. We're going to add some depth to this. So we're going to press A to select everything. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and then we're going to bring this back some. Don't worry about the shading at this point. And you just want to bring it back far enough to get the relative depth of this part here. So something along these lines is probably relatively reasonable. That should be fine. Then we're going to press A twice. We're going to do Control N to recalculate the normals. And you'll notice we have all these strange lines going through here. And the reason for that is actually because if we go to face select and Z for wireframe, you can see we have some interior faces. And that's what's causing the problem here. So we're going to do Z for wireframe, make sure you're in face select, select one of these faces, go to select, select similar, and choose coplanar. Then we're going to do delete and choose faces. That fixes most of the problems here, but there's actually one more problem. You can see the shading in this area is kind of messed up. And again, it's interior faces. So if we do Z for wireframe again, you can see there's a little dot here which indicates there's a face where there should not be a face. So we're going to right click on this dot. And there's another one down here actually. So we're going to hold shift and right click on this one. Press delete and choose faces. And now we should see that that problem is now corrected. So the next thing we're going to do is create the second one of these over here. And it's got a bit more of a complex shape here in the center, so we'll work that out. But the outer part is actually essentially the same as this outer part, so we can just take it and duplicate it and then use it for the next one. But before I forget, we're just going to go into edit mode, and you see the edges here, how they look now, but it actually would look better if we do Alt right click to get this edge loop, and then do I and then B to inset and do a really small inset here. And that's just going to make them look nicer on the outside. And another thing you can do is go to vertex select, Alt right click on this one, Alt and Shift right click on this one, change this to 3D cursor, make sure your cursor's in the center by doing Shift S cursor to center. Then do S, Shift, and X, and you can actually change, you can see it right here, you can do S, Shift, and X, and you can actually change this one to be a bit closer as well. And you'll get a crisper edge on the very outer edge. if that's what you like, you can do it that way. Another thing we want to do is go back to face select, and we want to add an inset on the inside of both of these. So we're going to Alt right click, Alt and Shift right click, then do I and B, and just do a really small inset again. This will help with the shading. It'll also help with subdivision surface if we ever decide to use that on this particular model. So now that that is out of the way, we're going to Alt right click on this to get this top edge loop again. Do Control plus again, Control plus again, and Control plus one more time just for good measure. And this will be that starting point for us. So we're going to do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel. I'm going to change this to median point and then bring this back some. This will be our second part of the disc brake here. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to bring these down slightly and then bring them in slightly, because this doesn't start all the way at the edge, it starts a little bit in. So we're going to have to bring this down slightly and then in a little bit, and then we can create this shape that we have here. So we're going to switch to vertex select, and we're going to Alt right click on this very innermost edge. We're going to change this to the 3D cursor, or we can actually just leave it the way it is now and do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and just bring it in slightly. For the next step, we're going to want to change this to the 3D cursor though. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, S, Shift and X, and then bring this in slightly. The next step is to make this shape that we have. So to do that, we're actually just going to use this starting edge loop as our reference to begin with. So we have this selected already, and we want to hold Shift and right click to select this vertex. It's the innermost vertex of this flat area right here. It's also the center vertex, so you see the center line. We want this vertex so that we know how far down we want it, because on this, if I go to side view or actually left view, you'll see that these kind of come down and they line up very nicely with this piece right here. So in order to do that, we're going to use this bottom point as a reference so we can make this nice flatter area be very nicely lined up with the rest of this. So that's why I'm selecting that vertex as just as a reference point. Then we're going to do Shift D to duplicate this, right click to cancel. We're going to press P to separate it into a different object and choose the selection. So now that selection is now a different object. So we're going to tab into object mode, right click to select this piece, H to hide, and now we have our circle. Select the circle, tab into edit mode, and we have that starting circle shape plus this as our reference point. We're going to do 3 for side view. This vertex needs to be on the same Z value as this vertex. So I'm going to change this. Well, actually we can probably just leave it and do G and then Z for the Z axis, so we're only moving on the Z axis. Hold Control and snap it to that point, then left click to confirm. We're done with this point, so we can right click to select it, press delete, and choose vertices. And then 3 to go back into side view. So that's as far down as we want to bring that point. To make the rest of the shape, we're going to need a point here to stay there pretty much. And then we need to eventually bevel this. But this part is actually flat, or very, very close to flat. So in order to make that part, well actually this point's going to stay there, but we're going to use this point to create that flatter part. So I'm going to change this to median point, We're going to grab it on the Z-axis, hold Control and snap it to this point, and then we can bring it in, and this will create that flatter area, and this point will be the other area, and then this point again would be similar to where this is going to be, but instead of trying to guess at where it's going to be, we're actually just going to take this shape and duplicate it and rotate it around. So we have this one selected. We're going to hold Shift and select this one and then press Delete and choose Vertices. So we only have these vertices to work with, and that's fine. We're actually going to need a different empty for this because we need a different rotation value. If you look at this, if we click this button, you can see the result we're getting here. This is not what we want, and we actually want more of these. We want 10 of them, so we can take the count and left click and then change it to 10 and press enter, and then click this X to remove that empty as the object. Then we're going to press tab to go to object mode. Make sure you're in the create tab, scroll down, click on empty. That's going to add in an empty, and then make sure you're in side view by pressing 3 on the number pad, then press R36 and press enter. It's going to rotate the empty 36 degrees so we can use it as a reference point. Then we're going to select this object by right clicking it, click on the eyedropper, and then click on the empty, and now you can see the result that we want. So we're going to right click on the empty, press H to hide it, then we're going to right click on this to select it, and we can actually at this point just apply our modifiers. We can just click on apply for both of these and then tab into edit mode, A twice, W, remove doubles, and it looks like everything's already set up so that things were removed automatically, so that's not a problem. Now what we want to do is to bevel this as well as bevel this one. We only have to do the bevels on this side because we're going to take these vertices, mirror them, and do the array again. So we only have to do these 3 vertices. This one doesn't need to be beveled, so we're just going to take this one first. We're going to do Control Shift B, mouse wheel up once, and round that corner off just a little bit. And actually, to keep things consistent, we can do Control Z and we can bevel this one as well at the same time. So we can do Control Shift B, mouse wheel up once, and do the small bevel again. Then select this point, do Control Shift B, mouse wheel up until you have 5 vertices, and then do a bevel similar to this, I guess would be fine. Then we're going to switch to the 3D cursor here. We're going to select these vertices, so select one, hold Control, right click to select all of these. Make sure your cursor is in the center. And then do S, Shift, and X, and scale this out some to get a shape similar to what we want. Something like this is pretty good. Now we don't need any of these other vertices, so we're going to select this one, hold Control, select this one, do Control I to invert the selection. If that's not working, press H to hide, A to select, delete and choose vertices, Alt H to unhide that selection, add modifier, mirror, change the axis to this one, turn on clipping, turn on this option, and then add the array modifier back again, change the count to 10, turn off this relative option, turn on the object option, left click here, mouse wheel down until you find empty 0, 1, left click here. And you can also turn on this button if you want to see the result. And we're going to turn on merge and then first and last to make sure that all of the vertices are going to get merged together. So now, as you can see, we have a shape like this, which is ready to be used to create this part right here. We can do Alt-H to unhide everything. We want to hide this empty again, so right click to select it, H to hide. And we can see we actually need to scale this down a bit. These outer circles are actually going a bit too far out. So we're going to right click on this, tab into edit mode, Control 3 for left view, and we can select these vertices here. You can do Z for wireframe if you need to. We just want it to be smaller than this part right here. So do Control 3 for side view or left view, S, Shift and X, scale it down slightly. Something like that's going to be fine. Maybe slightly more, looks like, because we want it to be smaller than this edge. So I'm going to do S, Shift and X and scale it down just a little bit more. And I believe that should be fine. So now what we're going to do is tab to go to object mode, select this object again, H to hide it. Select this object, press 3 to go to side view. This time it's actually 3. So you should be in right view. It does make a difference in this case, so just make sure you're in right view. So we're going to select this one, and actually first we're going to apply these modifiers. So go to object mode, and then we're going to apply these modifiers. So just click apply and then click apply again. Tab into edit mode. And I believe we just want this right here. So we're going to select this vertex, hold Control, and select this one. Then you can do Control I. If that doesn't work, you can hide these and then press A, then delete like we did before. Either way, you want all the rest of the stuff selected. Press delete and choose vertices. Now we can press tab to go to object mode. You can press Alt-H to unhide everything. Select the empty again, H to hide that. We want to join these objects together, so we're going to select this piece, hold Shift, right click to select this, Control J to join, and now we see our nice little shape. So we can tab into edit mode. One of the first things we want to do is take these vertices and merge them together. So we're going to zoom in a lot. We're going to take this vertex. And if it's not close enough for you, if you want it to be closer, you can actually just select this vertex, hold Control, select this one. Control 3 for left view, and then do S, Shift and X, and scale it out or in depending on what you need to do. Just make sure you're on the 3D cursor when you're doing this, and your cursor is also at the center as usual. The goal is to try to get them fairly close. You don't have to get them perfect. It's really not that important. Then once they're close, you're going to take the one that is on this part. So the one in this case is right here. So I'm going to right click to select this. And then shift select this other one. Then do Alt M at last. That's going to merge it down to be part of this other shape. And this side's already taken care of because it's part of this other thing. But actually, one thing I definitely forgot to do, so we're going to do Control Z until that goes away. Until they're not merged anymore. So one thing I forgot to do is actually this flat part is supposed to be halfway between these two circles. So the flat part's supposed to be here, as you can see on this, as well as the references that are in the description. So we need to rotate this. The main reason we made the flat part here to begin with is because it's a lot easier when you're making a flat part to have it right on an axis. So like the y-axis in this case. This is in line with the y-axis. It makes it very easy to make sure it's perfectly flat. And then you can rotate it later. So it's a lot easier to do it that way rather than trying to make it perfectly flat on this strange diagonal, which would not be as easy as making it right here. But we do need to rotate this, and in order to do that, it's going to be easier if we make it a separate object again real quick. So if we alt right click on this and then do P and choose selection and then tab to object mode, then select this piece again, tab into edit mode, or actually just stay in object mode, and then we need to apply these modifiers. So we're going to click apply and then apply, then tab to edit mode, A to select. Again, make sure it's on 3D cursor and the cursor is in the center. Then do R and then 18 and press enter. The reason we're doing 18 and the reason that's the correct value is because from this circle to this circle is 36 degrees, and we want to do half of that, which is of course 18 degrees. To figure this out initially, it was 360 divided by how many circles we had, and then we divided that by 2 to figure out the half value for this part. So now that we have this done, we're going to tab back into object mode, hold shift, right click to select this. And actually what I forgot to do again is select this, we're actually going to select this and then press H to hide it, select this, 3 for side view, tab into edit mode, select this vertex, hold control, select this vertex, then do control I, delete, choose vertices, tab to object mode, alt H to unhide, select the empty, press H to hide that, select this piece, hold shift, right click to select this, control J, and now we're back to where we were essentially, except it's now rotated so that it's correct. So we're going to do control 3, tab into edit mode here, and we're going to zoom in on this diagonal line. We're going to take this point and we're going to hold control, or hold shift I mean, and select this point and do alt M at last, and that one should be merged right there. Then we need to do the same in the center. Select this point, hold shift, select this one, alt M at last. So the only 2 points you need to merge are the center point and this very outer point right here. It's also on this side, but they're both mirrored, so it's the same point. So you only have to merge it once. From here we can alt right click, alt and shift right click. A quick way to fill in this area is to do alt and then F. You will get triangles, but it fills it in reasonably quickly. One thing I want to change is I want this vertex and this vertex to actually have an edge going this way rather than having this strange little triangle at the bottom. So I'm going to select this vertex, hold shift and select this one, press J to join them. Then I'm going to select this vertex, shift select here, alt M at last, and do the same over here, select, shift select, J to join, select, shift select, alt M at last. One more thing we're going to need to do, similar to the circles where we added in a support loop here, we're going to need a support loop here as well, but actually we want it to be, instead of being on the inside here, we actually want it to be in this way. And in order to do that, we're going to alt right click, and if you do that, you notice you get all this extra stuff that we don't want. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to select this vertex at the top. We're going to hold control and then right click, continue holding control and right click, and continue that process until you have all this selected. We're going to do Control 3 to make sure we're in left view. Make sure you have your 3D cursor still here and that it's in the center. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, S, Shift and X as usual. And this time we actually want to scale to 0 because you'll notice as we scale it down it gets closer and closer to the center. We want it to actually be perfectly at the center, so we're just going to press 0 and press enter. And this creates a whole bunch of faces here which we can use to inset. So we're going to switch to face select. Select one of these faces, C for circle select to get the rest of them. You can do Z for wireframe and make sure you didn't select anything else. One time when I tried this I had other stuff selected, so just make sure you have only these faces selected and nothing else. Then we're just going to do I to inset, B for the border option, and do a small inset. When you're happy, you can press delete and choose faces. So now, as you can see, we have that nice inner edge to support the other edge, of course. The last part is to make sure that this geometry gets all connected up. So what I'm going to do to make it a little easier to see things is hide this front part. So we're just going to right click to select any vertex, Control L, H to hide. So we want this front part to come back and connect up to this part. So we're going to Alt right click. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel. You can change this to median point for a minute. And then grab it on the x-axis, hold Control, snap it to this point so that it has the same x value. We still need this inner edge loop, this inner supporting edge loop. So what we're going to do is select one of these vertices, this top one on the inner edge loop, hold Control, right click to select, continue holding Control and right clicking to select until you have this entire edge loop. We're going to do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel. Again, we're going to bring it back on the x-axis, hold Control and snap it to this point, or any of these points on the outer edge right here. So now we have this edge loop, and we want to Alt and Shift, right click to select this original edge loop on the inside. And you can see we don't have faces at this point, so we're going to do Shift and Q to create faces. Shift and Q just does bridge edge loops for me. If you don't have that, go to Mesh, Edges, and Bridge Edge Loops. Just left click on this and it will do the same thing. Lastly, we're going to Alt right click on this very inner edge, the one that's closest to this outer edge. Then we're going to Alt and Shift, right click to select this one. Again, we're going to do Bridge Edge Loops. Shift and Q for me. If you don't have that, again, Mesh, Edges, Bridge Edge Loops, and you're good to go. So now we have this. We also, in object mode, want to go to Tools and make sure everything is smooth shading. And we also want to change this by going to Face Select, Alt right click, then do I and B, and do a small inset to help correct the shading in that area so we have a nice looking inner area here. Another detail that I forgot to add is this part of the rim actually needs to be scaled out a bit. So we're going to press Tab to go to Edit Mode, Alt H to unhide everything. And by rim, of course, I meant disc brake. But what we want to do is just Alt right click here, Alt and Shift right click to get both of these. Change this to 3D cursor. Again, make sure it's in the center. Do Shift S, cursor to center. And then we're going to do S to scale, Shift X to exclude the x-axis and just scale this out slightly. You'll see in the reference picture that this actually looks like it is scaled out a little bit like this. So just use your best estimate to how far this should be scaled out. I'm not exactly sure at the moment how far out it should be scaled out. Probably not too far. This one I don't think I did too much of scaling, so just do a little bit until you think it looks nice, and then just go to File and Save. Thank you to our awesome Patreon supporters. If you'd like to become a Patreon supporter yourself, head on over to patreon.com/StephenBrooks. Thank you for your support.